But without further ado, let's get started with sort of what we will be covering today. So as it's been a while, I do want to give some updates on sort of what we've been up to over the past months, just so everyone is aware. Then I'll do a quick overview of AutoTest V2 for everyone who hasn't used it yet. Go over some differences with V1. Then we'll go through some demos of the configuration, the quizzes. I'll quickly introduce the API and sort of how to get stuff over to ATV2, whether you're using ATV1 right now or whether you're not using any auto-grading at all. And then we should have plenty of time for Q&A. And luckily, I also see that Thomas, our CTO, has joined. So if it gets technical, then I have someone to get difficult questions to that I won't be able to answer. Quickly, sort of what we've been up to behind the scenes. Are we? Yeah, we are recording. Basically, within AutoTest V2 and sort of the platform as a whole, we've really focused on increasing stability and performance over the summer. Because since August 1st, we had over 4.5 million submissions, over 7 million AutoTest V2 runs, and on average about 10,000 daily active users and over 40,000 monthly active users. So hopefully you've been noticing these improvement changes. This was also a big reason why we've sort of moved from the first version of AutoTest to the second version, because the first version wouldn't be able to handle this kind of scale. So our product team has been working really hard on making sure that sort of everything runs instantly, performance improvements, and basically making sure everybody has a good experience as we have entered sort of this back-to-school period. We've also launched a private beta of our sort of built-in AI assistant, and we'll do a webinar on this next month to sort of formally showcase this. So you can look out for that. And I think we will also be looking for people that want to sort of test this out shortly. So open this up to more people. And then generally as a company, we've been sort of investing in the team heavily over the past months to sort of bring you more features faster, but also bring back the community more and give you better support. So we have some great new members of the support team, Thibaut and Fatima, who are not here right now. But you've probably been interacting with them as well, and that's been great. So if you do want any help, you can of course always reach us at support@codegrade.com, which Evie, I guess, can put in the chat as well, or join our Discord community, which we will be sort of more actively using going forward, and hopefully getting a bit more back and forth there as well. So if you have some cool features and things you're doing within your courses, yeah, please reach out, because then we can share that with others, and we can sort of help you as well. With that out of the way, let's move to the next part, which is content of the webinar. So a quick recap of what AutoTest V2 is compared to V1, and we'll get into sort of demos very shortly. But basically, the main thing is an improved infrastructure, which sort of starts up almost instantly. And students also have access to more computing power within the AutoTest V2 infra. And it's also fully integrated with sort of the built-in editor. So over the past sort of in 2024, we've made a lot of improvements to this editing environment. And we've launched some new features in there that are sort of built on AutoTest V2, like quizzes, which we'll go into later today as well. And everything is sort of powered with this block-based configuration UI that makes it a lot easier for you as a teacher to set up assignments, test assignments, and make them more flexible. So that's sort of what we've done over the past sort of year and a half. We've been developing it probably almost 2 years now, but this year it's been sort of fully stabilized, and it's gotten a lot faster, and this is a lot more scalable and stable than AutoTest V1. So if you haven't changed over yet, hopefully after this webinar, we'll convince you to switch. And I'll also share some resources at the end to help you switch. key differences then with AutoTest V1, the biggest one is sort of more flexibility. So some examples of that is we have, which we'll show in a second, we have all these blocks that you can sort of nest under each other, through which you're basically writing a program without having to code. So it's sort of heavily based on sort of Scratch UI, so make it really simple for you as a teacher to set up assignments that do complicated things. Another big part is sort of a test-driven configuration workflow. So the thing with AutoTest V1 that we heard a ton is that testing if your configuration works is a bit of a pain because you have to sort of start the auto test. It takes a while to start up. If there's already submissions, it will run on all submissions and it's sort of always live. And there's not really a way to sort of build and then push. So within AutoTest V2, we have this whole workflow where you can sort of work without having to publish it yet. You press a button, it will automatically run on your test submission. You will see the results in sort of a pop-up. And if you're happy, you can press a publish button and actually get it to your students. With that, there's also basically no submit buttons in AutoTest V2, so it's a lot more clean and nice to use. And we've removed a lot of constraints that were part of AutoTest V1. So for instance, the requirement to connect to a rubric in V1, that's not there in V2. And in general, there's just more flexibility. And then in V1, we had a lot of these CG commands like CG, JUnit. We've replaced that with a sort of a new CG command that's a lot more powerful and that also sort of more deeply integrates within the autograding infrastructure. But we'll showcase this all in a second. So let's go into some demos then. If you have any questions in the meantime, just feel free to sort of pop them in the chat and we'll be able to sort of go through that. Let me quickly show you an example of what it looks like from the student perspective. So let me start with a simple Python example. This is, in this case, integrated with the LMS, but it works without an LMS as well, or whichever LMS you use. And this is from the student perspective. Basically, AutoTest V2 works with any of the submission methods, but the biggest one is that it also integrates with the built-in editor. So I can start here from a template, and then if you use AutoTest V2 within the editor, there is this run button. And if you press this run button, what will happen is it will basically run the automated tests within the editing environment. So here you basically see the question here. And then immediately within the editor, it's running the tests. So you can see there's sort of an updated UI here as well. And I can basically see whether it passes or fails. And then after I make any edits and I'm happy, I can press the hand in button. And after I hand it in, it will actually run tests again. But as we have a lot of flexibility, in this case, you see there's also some hidden test cases that only get run if you hand in, for instance. So there's a lot of flexibility to sort of do things. That's sort of a quick student overview. So you can basically see it sort of running here. Let me go to an example in a second. So this is the first part, right? So this is very similar to what AutoTest V1 was doing, where you just like upload a file or you hand in and then it shows you. Another big feature we created in V2 are these coding quizzes. So let me go to an example of that. So in this case, let me reset the student, zoom out a little bit. All right. So this is also using another feature called the simplified submission mode, where students are launched directly into the editor. And here you can see an example of a quiz in CodeGrade. So with quizzes, you can actually combine sort of multiple choice question with short coding questions. So here you see an example of, as a student, I have a quiz of 5 questions. And this is all powered by AutoTest V2, where first I get a multiple choice question, and I get what's the list in Python. Okay, that's this probably. Then I get another multiple choice question, and this is actually select all and apply. So I can select, and let's make some mistakes here. Then I get another one, but maybe I skip that, and then I get a coding question. And the coding question is quite neat as well, that it sort of allows you to give these shorter coding questions where students get a question statement here, and then immediately below that they have an editor. So they don't have the requirement to create a file first or to match a file name. It's really just reading a question and answering it. And you can see it's also preloaded here with a template that I can write. So I can do something like return, and let's just make a mistake first. At any point I can press run, and with the coding question you can see it actually shows up below here, and it runs immediately. And here you can see it's actually running some PyTests that I'll fill. Let's make an error here, because we also have this sort of comments feature within AutoTest V2 where you can give feedback right in the code itself. So these are basically your code quality tests kind of things. But this is sort of a publicly available API in AutoTest V2 where you can also do a lot of custom stuff with that. But also all of the code quality steps use this feature. So as a student, it's super clear now that I expect a colon here. So let me fix that. And then I also decide to answer it correctly. And then I can run it again. AutoTest will start up, and within a couple seconds, I will get my answer. Of course, as we demo, it's always a bit slower. All right, there we go. And then now all my tests pass. And again, this is a PyTest with a lot of unit tests that have been set up. And now I can go to the next one, maybe answer that. But let's just hand in. I get a warning, there's still unanswered questions, but I'm sure I want to hand in. And then again, it will run the AutoTest. In this case, the multiple choice will only show up the moment I hand in, actually. So you can set like a limit that students can maybe only hand in once, so they don't, they cannot sort of cheat on the multiple choice questions, or you can just do this as sort of a formative thing. So what we've seen with teachers is they're sort of using this either for sort of more formative, like knowledge checks, where students just write like simple, they sort of get experience with a certain concept, like in this case with lists in Python. But we also see being used more in like sort of an exam setting and things like that. Again, this all integrates with the rubric. I get a grade, and that's sent back to the LMS in this case.
There's one question as well. Carol says, what about type annotations?
What do you mean by that?
Can you also check for type annotations here in this, let's say, code inside quiz questions?
Right. So you can basically do anything that you would be able to do in normal questions as well. So you should be able to check for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just with the auto grading. So this is just the coding questions are exactly the same as the normal questions from the auto grading perspective, which we'll basically see in a second. But that's a good question. It will all become clear probably as soon as we go into the configuration UI. So let's actually do that. So let me leave the students view, and then let's open in a new tab. By the way, there's also now a student view within CodeGrade. So there's a button here in the bottom left where you can just enable the student view. So you don't have to go through the LMS one, or if you're using CodeGrade without an LMS, you can just press on this. It will pop into a student view that actually uses the submission that's made with your account. And this is exactly how a student would see it. And then at any point, I can leave the student view, and then I'm back into the teacher view. So this is a really nice feature that we launched a couple of months ago as well. That should make the whole experience of sort of setting up these assignments and testing it a lot easier as well. Let me actually start with this Fibonacci example. So if you go to the settings and you go to AutoTest, and you press AutoTest V2, you will see this new UI. That is the AutoTest V2 UI. And in concept of sort of setting up and test, it's similar to AutoTest V1. So we still have a setup phase that sort of runs once, then creates an image, and then as soon as students press that run button or hand in, it starts from sort of after the setup phase. So if you need to install things that take a long time, you can still do that sort of in the setup phase. And then again, the test is sort of where all your tests live, and those get executed every time a student presses either run or hand in. So the big difference here is, of course, we have all these blocks now. So if I want to install Python, I can just select the Python version. So if I want to switch to Python 3.12, I just change it here, and it's done. I have a script block here where I can install software. So if I want to install like pandas, for instance, I can just pip install pandas and just do that here. And then at any time, if I want to sort of rebuild this, basically build the combination of setup and test, an AutoTest V2 configuration, I just press this build snapshot, and it will start running the setup again. So that might take a while. I can just go out of this, continue with stuff, and you will see that the old version is still published here. So that's a big change in concept, that like I can make changes and I don't have to immediately sort of stop the AutoTest and sort of that there's no feedback and then restart it. I can do that all sort of asynchronously. Anytime I can go back here, it's just working on it behind the scenes. I can continue making changes, and then once I'm ready and happy, then I can actually publish this to student. And again, just like AutoTest V1, it will rerun on all previous submissions, all latest previous submissions, and students will get the new feedback. From the test perspective, what you will see is to grade things. So within AutoTest V2, it's not required to grade things, to make graded tests anymore. So in V1, you always had to add things to a rubric category, but here you can decide to just have certain tests be ungraded. So I can have like a script block maybe here where I do like some setup, and then anything in here, as long as it's not connected to any rubric, this is not graded. So students won't get penalized if they fill this or etc. How it works is basically this is a tree, and it will just run it sequentially from top to bottom. And if I expand this, you can basically nest things. So everything inside this connect rubric connects to this functionality rubric. All these tests in here will fill in this rubric and assign a grade. Again, now to do a weight, you just have this wrapper block that sets a weight, and you can just nest it on everything, and every test inside this will get the weight of 3 now. Then I have an actual test in here. So for instance, this input-output test where I run Fibonacci.py, I give some input, I expect some output, and I can just make all my different cases. And then you see some of the flexibility that we have now. So you can see that we want to run some extra tests when students hand in. So while they're sort of in that editor environment, they're not distracted by these. And then I can also only run these if all of the other tests pass, so make this sort of an extra credit stuff. And then I can hide certain things before the deadline or always to make them sort of hidden. So here you can see a hidden test case where the result, students won't know the result before the deadline, and after the deadline passes, automatically they'll be able to see the result, and they're never able to see the output of this. So if you want to do that, you can just do that. If we don't want to hide the output, or maybe also just before deadline, we can just change this to before deadline. And we have some other cases here. Then again, we have some code structure tests. So this integrates SemGrep, which is sort of a tool that you may have used in AutoTest V1, but this basically allows you to check for certain code structures within the code. So here we're looking if they did not use recursion. So this is a negative match. We don't want to see any function that calls itself. And here we want to see if they created like an if name is main block. And then again, we have like a hidden test that runs PyTest. Again, in AutoTest V1, you always had to upload like a file. Here you can just copy paste stuff in as well. And basically write your test in here if you want. And finally, we run flake8 on the code. So this is, again, similar to an AutoTest V1. You have the code quality test. So now for Python, we have this flake8 block. If you still want to like run some custom tests or upload files, there is an upload files block. I can upload a file in here, and I can also just edit it in line here, and it will be available in the fixtures directory or in this new uploaded files directory. Both will work. Again, once I'm done with this, so let me delete this. I build it. It will automatically run on the test submission, so I can see like, does this actually work? So I can wait for this to finish, or if I'm happy already, I can just publish to students, and now the new version will be available and automatically rerun on all previous students. So if I go in here, I reload, you can already see it is running some new submissions here, and it will basically start up instantly and sort of run everything. Another big change sort of with AutoTest V1 is in V1 you had sort of the queue, and if you did this with 200 students, there would be quite a long wait time sometimes. That has also all been improved. So now basically everything is just running, and they will be able to see the results. That's sort of a quick example of a Python setup. So let's actually go to one of those quiz assignments. For the quiz, again, you have to turn on the editor here, and you don't actually have to upload any templates or anything. It will just work. And then once I go to this AutoTest, what you will see is we have a quiz block. And then once you give it a name here, what you would see in the student view is that, so if I actually enable it, a file named list here, that's a special code grade quiz file, will automatically be created that actually contains all of the quiz questions. So if I go back, this is basically how you do that. So everything happens behind the scenes. You don't have to upload anything yourself. And here you can just create certain questions. So here you see we have a rubric where every coding question is sort of its own points. And then here we have a coding question, the question statement, which you can put in here as markdown. You give it a file name, and this file name will then be available inside this block. So inside this block, I can just do sort of whatever I want. I upload a file, I run a custom sort of script that checks for syntax errors. Then I run some PyTests. And that's all just running on this answer file that automatically gets created behind the scenes. So here you can see we can just import from that, and we can just run the syntax script on it, and this will all just work. And again, for question 2, we just reuse the same file name. That will all just work. We give it a template. Again, in this case, we re-upload this file, which we don't need to do. We could have just done it at the top in the setup as well. Check the syntax, we run some PyTests, etc. So everything inside here will just grade this question, and it will appear below it in the editor. And I can just do anything that I could do in normal sort of auto-graded assignments. Any questions about this so far? All right, let's continue then. So again, we have a ton of different blocks that you can see here. For some languages more than others, but we also have this new CG command. So let me actually go back to this previous assignment. And what I can just do here is if I run CG help, build this, you will basically see the help of this command, which basically has a lot of utilities to be used in AutoTest. So here you can see some of the integrations that don't have a block yet are available within the CG command. So how we develop things is we generally first create like a utility here, and then after that we create a block. So for instance, if you want to do C++ gtest, we have a CG gtest command. And again, you can run CG gtest help, and it will give you help. Java, there's a utility to like compile stuff with Java and sort of provide comments within the editor. JUnit, and then we also have these sort of generic parsers. So for instance, if you want to use that feature where you write comments directly in the code, like highlight those lines, you can use the CG comments command, and if you run the help on this, then you will see how that works. Is you basically give it like a regular expression, and it can parse messages from any command that you give it. And this is a sort of, if you want to go to the advanced stuff, this is a really useful command to do things with. Also, if you sort of want to get started with AutoTest, if you press the question mark, you can go to our help center. And we have revised guides for most common programming languages and quizzes as well. So I can go into Java and then create my first Java assignment, and it will sort of give you a step-by-step guide on how to create your first Java assignment. And then it also has all sort of the more advanced Java auto-grading options, like how to do Youri Voet. And it has more examples about the CG commands. Or if I want to go into quizzes and how to do like a multiple choice question, we have these guides about AutoTest V2 online here that you can use. But of course, like our support team is also always available to help you out with setting up your assignments. What we've also recently released as well, which a lot of people were asking for, is an API for AutoTest V2. So we've released our V2 API, and we've also released a TypeScript client for this. So if you go to this, this is just an NPM package that you can install. And then you can actually do everything that you want in AutoTest V2 with this API. So you can actually create configurations with the API. So you can create all of these blocks programmatically. It's basically just a JSON request. So you can sort of set these up at scale. You can sort of publish the snapshots. You can update them here, etc. So this is basically does anything you want. Sort of, if you want to set up like automations and stuff, this is a really good use case for that. And again, we can sort of help you set up these things, especially if you're just getting started. It is nice that that you get sort of an example from us. We've a hand raised.
Yeah, so I'm a pretty I'm a real novice here, so I'm not sure if my well, it might be a dumb question, but so basically this API client is it like a complete alternative to just using the website?
So yeah, Thomas can maybe answer this best.
So at this moment, it's not a complete alternative to the website for a couple of ways. So Youri, so there's a slightly different way and how we configure AutoTest V2 compared to V1. So V1 was like a simple REST API. So you could post your data to it, and that's the data that we would save. For V2, we wanted to create a more dynamic environment. So we use like different data structures to make this audit saving possible. However, we didn't want to expose this kind of implementation details to users of our API. So the API does use a normal REST API. However, that does mean that some of the things like these incremental updates that you can do in the website, you can't do over the API. And then another thing that we wanted to create is have like more streaming output, as Youri just showed in V2. And that means that also the results that come in from AutoTest V2 are more difficult to interpret. Like there's a translation layer from this configuration to a different programming language that we created to execute this in an efficient way. And we haven't created an API yet to like retrieve the results for an AutoTest configuration. However, if people would find something useful like that, please let us know, and then we can prioritize that a bit more.
So maybe from the configuration standpoint, you can basically set everything up through the API and do that for multiple assignments at once. you're just building a tree basically in JSON, right? And you're just posting that and it will work. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Perfect. But again, if there's other needs, like we'd love to hear, especially what sort of power users are doing with these things, because that's sort of hard for us to see sometimes. All right. So the API that's available, you can install it, you can use it. Again, we're happy to help sort of write some scripts for you or give you some examples, or do like a session on sort of how the whole thing works and fits together. Then also sort of how to move to AutoTest V2. So if you're currently using V1 and you have a lot of assignments there, we do understand that it might be a bit painful to sort of recreate this in AutoTest V2. However, sort of due to the differences in concept, like we don't have complete feature parity with what is happening in V1, but pretty close. We don't have like an automatic conversion at the moment. We do have some sort of semi-automated ways here internally that we can sort of convert assignments for you, and then you can sort of test them out and see if that is still the same. And we're happy to do that. So if you currently have V1 assignments, we like our support team basically offers you to convert these for you, especially sort of maybe as you move into semester 2 now, where you're sort of setting up those courses. We can help you out with that. Or maybe if you're already looking forward to sort of fall 2025, where maybe the current course is still in V1 and the next year's course you want to do in V2, we can already help you sort of with moving that over. So basically you can sort of reach out to us, give us like the course link and which assignments you want to be converted, and we'll just add it to the list. Question by Chris, is there an ATV2 version of the Python curriculum in its assignments? Yes, so that's a great question. So of course we have the community library here, where there's a ton of like all the intro to Python stuff is in here, and these are actually all in AutoTest V2. So this is completely converted. We will also be doing a refresh of this course in sort of the next 4 months or so. So we're gonna go through all of these, add new quiz assignments, so integrate that quiz feature into the Intro to Python curriculum, and also sort of refresh these assignments. So there will be sort of a new version of the Intro to Python curriculum. But yes, it's all in ATV2 already. And if you sort of need help with importing that into your course, definitely let us know. If you currently have an ATV1 assignment, so let's actually just create that. So let's say I have a ATV1 assignment, and I need to have a rubric before. Before I can create one. If you have one, you cannot just change this over automatically to V2. You actually have to delete the configuration first, and then you can actually switch over. So if you do want to, you can, for instance, make a copy to a new assignment with this V1 configuration, then sort of delete this. If this is sort of your live, then you can go here, select another AutoTest version, and then you can go to V2 and potentially copy in like the updated configuration. If we change assignments over for you, we can do this all for you without sort of losing your data. But if you're not seeing like, how can I switch to ATV2, you first have to delete the configuration, make sure to make a copy if you want to keep the ATV1 configuration, and then before and then after that you can create a V2 configuration. All right, that was sort of a quick overview of where we're at with all of this. There's sort of a lot more features to go into, but again, those guides are pretty great. And then also, if you want like a specific sort of onboarding related to you within AutoTest V2, we can also set that up. Our support team now has sort of an AutoTest V2 workshop that they do that they're happy to give to you as well.